mics today. Hello, welcome to RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is June 5th, 2024. We are here in the Freeport High School Library. We will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the May 8th, 2024 and May 15th, 2024 meetings as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Thank you, Cheyenne and Carolyn. All those in favor? Great, none opposed. Adjustments to the agenda.
I do have one this evening under number 14, personnel. I'd like to add a letter B, consideration and approval to employ a board-certified behavior analyst, BCBA, for the 2024-2025 school year. And those are all the adjustments.
All right, so we will move right along to number 6, good news and recognition. And this is always one of those bittersweet agenda items where we recognize and thank our retirees for their service and their time here in RSU 5. And so I'm handing it off to you.
You are.
Okay. You know it's important when she goes to the mic to do it.
Okay. This year, we're saying goodbye to 5 of our members of RSU 5 team who are going on to the next stage in their life, which is retirement, and we certainly welcome, wish them all the best in whatever they do next in their wonderful life. So I'm going to first ask if Dr. Sellers will come up to present some awards. Our first recognition is Melissa Cousins.
All right, good evening, everyone. So RSU 5 and the instructional support team wish to honor and celebrate 2 individuals who've dedicated their career to making a difference in the lives of countless students and families. So we have Melissa Cousins here tonight. Melissa Cousins is one of our speech language therapists, and she is retiring after 42 years of service. So thank you so much, Melissa. Melissa wanted to be a speech therapist since the age of 12. Inspired by watching her father provide various therapies to her sister who has cerebral palsy. And Melissa pursued a BA in speech pathology and audiology. She started graduate school in South Carolina, but unhappy in South Carolina after 1 year. She moved to Patton, Maine, where her college roommate lived with the promise of plenty of jobs in Maine. So in Patton, she worked on a construction road crew, finishing I-95. And then when that gig wrapped up, she went to Mars Hill as a speech pathologist before a master's degree was required, and then went to University of Maine at Orono, finishing her master's in communication disorders. She then went on to Aroostook Mental Health Center, where she worked for 4 years. And after that, she gained experience in several clinical and school settings, landing for 12 years in Kennebunk and then in RSU 5 since 2013. So Melissa has served all ages range from pre-K to adult. When asked about the biggest change in this field of special education, Melissa said that the broader range of students with multiple disabilities included in the public schools has been one of the biggest changes. So, Melissa has really seen that change in era from students with moderate to severe disabilities being segregated in institutional settings to being welcomed into the public schools. So her plans for the future are to continue early childhood speech therapy in her home office and to travel and garden. So Melissa, as you embark on this new chapter, know that you leave behind a community deeply grateful for your contributions, and we wish you all the best in your well-deserved retirement.
And I'm sure they would be happy to have you back at Maine DOT. There's tons of work. Picks up some extra hours.
All right. So our other retiree couldn't be here with us tonight, and that's Special Education Coordinator Melinda Carr, who's retiring after 26 years of service in special education. Melissa worked in the banking sector until her care and compassion for her nephew with autism drew her into special education. She earned a master's in special ed from UMaine at Orono, and she started in the classroom and went on to serve in a variety of administrative positions, including Assistant Director of Pupil Services in Bangor, before landing in Westbrook to be near her children. From there, she came to RSU 5 in 2015 and has been here since. Melinda's years of experience and knowledge of special ed laws and procedure have been a true asset to the instructional support leadership team. When asked about the biggest change in the field of special education, Melinda said the extent of social, emotional, and behavioral needs of our students. She expressed gratitude to RSU 5 for the opportunity to receive training in Orton Gillingham reading instruction, a methodology that's designed to help struggling readers by explicitly teaching the connections between letters and sounds. Her plans for the future are to spend time with her grandchildren and see what other opportunities are out there in the field of literacy instruction. So thank you to Melinda Carr.
And I'll invite Principal Nickerson to come up and honor Christy Johnson, who is with us this evening.
So Christy officially retired in November, so it's a privilege to honor her here this evening. Christy's retiring after 21 years in Freeport and RSU 5 schools. Prior to joining us, she taught in Cumberland and Portland and a couple of years in New Hampshire too. In the time that I have been working with Christy, she's always been in second grade, and there is debate about a year or two in first, which has been confirmed tonight that she did teach first. Christy has always been the go-to person for all things math. She's participated in curriculum work as part of the math committee, as well as learning about math running records and influencing them being utilized across our school. Christy is known for her organization and structure with a classroom that is always neatly labeled and organized. And when Moore Street started to shift from PBIS to responsive classroom, Christy was a part of a group that went to the training during the summer to start the ball rolling for our school. Throughout my time working with Christy, she has always been a learner. She would often come and chat at the end of the summer and share her new learning from whatever professional books she's read over the break. Christy often introduced creative projects with her students. She was known for tie-dyeing shirts before Winslow Field Day so that all her students looked the same while they were there, and her weekly newsletter was a podcast recorded by students and sent to families. Christy's students always knew Christy cared for them, as she would make them neck warmers and pillowcases as gifts for holidays and end of year. Christy's dedication to her students and her teaching, as well as Moore Street School, have made a lasting impression and is already missed by us all. And thankfully, she's been able to return this spring and help out on our assessment team. And we wish her well, and as she continues to focus on things that bring her joy.
Now, Principal Gulko will come up and honor Mr. Deerberg.
Good evening, everybody. I'm losing my voice a little bit from cheering for our seniors over the past few days, so forgive me for that. I actually have the distinct pleasure of speaking about two of our FHS staff members who are retiring this year, one of who could not be with us tonight. So I'm going to start with Lori Pitkavich, or Miss P as the students call her, because no one could actually pronounce her name correctly. Lori couldn't be here tonight, but I want to honor her time and her work at FHS. She has spent 23 years at Freeport High School. She started as an ed tech in the special ed department and supported students in academic support classes. She served as the building sub for 3 years, which we all know is a critical role. She shifted into the role of the main office, working for Craig Sickles, our former athletic director, for 6 years, then took another road in her FHS journey and was the library ed tech. Then 10 years ago, she came to the main office to be the administrative assistant for the principal, where she and I have been working together for 9 of those 10 years. These roles have given Lori a knowledge of our building and our school community like no other, and so many of us have relied on her for historical knowledge, guidance, support, or just a spot in the main office where you could take a breath for a minute. If you've ever seen that Peanuts cartoon of Lucy with the 5 cents stand for advice, that is Lori, and we actually have that little sign in her office. She has been incredibly committed to FHS and has been a support for so many in her 23 years here. She has supported me since the day I arrived in Freeport, and for the life of me could not find the locker rooms and many other places in the building. And she helped me learn so much about our community and our school. We will miss Lori so very much and wish her all the best in her retirement, where she'll be able to go for long walks with her beloved dogs, hang out with her family, and watch many hours of the Red Sox. And we thank Lori for all of her work, energy, and commitment to FHS. I also have the absolute honor of speaking about Jeff Dierberg, our retiring social studies teacher at FHS. Jeff came here in 1998 after a few years of teaching at Nokomis High School and has 31 years in total of teaching history to our young people. Jeff has spent years at FHS instilling a love of history and learning about the world around us in his students. He's taught just about every class we've offered for the social studies department, with the most time dedicated to American history. And he also recently started our AP US history class. There's been so many times where I visited Jeff's classes over the past 9 years, where I'm supposed to be there to give feedback and observe his instructional practices, and I'm captivated by the history lesson that he's sharing. I have loved watching Jeff's mock trial class, which is the epitome of what we want learning to be, where students are so engaged in the class that you can hear and see and feel the passion and ownership of what they're learning. And you might remember that Jeff took our mock trial team to the state championship in 2020 and won online in masks. Unbelievable. Jeff has been the advisor of our fishing club, which has been a small group, but it's one that has helped some students connect to our school in a way that they never would have without Jeff's help. Jeff is a fierce advocate for his colleagues and is incredibly well respected in our school community. There is so much that our school will miss about Jeff: his passionate love of history, his high fives for each and every student as they walk in the door of his classroom, his ability to push students to high levels of success while also supporting them along that pathway, and the millions of other ways that he has impacted our school community. I wish you the very best in your retirement and share my sincere thanks for all you've given to FHS.
Just the students, Beth, sorry. So thank you, Melissa, Christy, and Jeff, and also Lori and Melinda, for all that you've given to all of the students here in RSU 5, whether they crossed your path or not. You know, the investment that you put into this district is obvious, and as the board, we will miss you, but we wish you all the best as you move on to your future endeavors, whether they be in DOT or not. So thank you all very much. And don't forget to take dessert. Ginny gets mad if I don't remind people to take their desserts. All right, so we will move on to more good news and recognition. Our board rep report from Miss Phoebe.
Yeah, so it's like the busiest time of year, but still very awesome and fun. So we had our class elections, where students voted on the people who will represent their classes. So congratulations to everybody who was elected for the upcoming sophomores, juniors, and seniors. It's also senior week for the seniors who are going to be graduating on Sunday. So they're doing all sorts of really fun stuff. Finals start tomorrow, which is so exciting. So students will have the opportunity to show off all that they've learned for this year. Our spring sports teams are entering playoffs, which is super exciting. I think there was baseball today. softball tomorrow. We had our senior project presentations where the seniors who spent the month of May working on projects of their choice got to present in the FPAC to students and families. And personally, I watched a lot, and they were all so good, and you could really tell the amount of work that the seniors put into these projects. And then our student leadership committee presented to different PLC groups a couple weeks ago about the findings that we learned from the conversations we hosted this year, which went super well. And I think the student leadership committee is going to be presenting at a school board meeting in the fall, hopefully. So that will be awesome. And then a couple weeks ago, we also had our walk, which was a fundraiser for Make-A-Wish Maine. And I think we just about reached the goal of the amount of money we wanted to raise, which was $5,000 for Make-A-Wish Maine, which is so exciting. So yeah, we're busy but having lots of fun.
So if you need to leave to go study for finals, we would not hold that against you. Don't you worry. Totally understand. Unless it's for Mr. Dearberg's class, then he said you just get an automatic A. All right. Public comment. I don't see anyone, but we have another at the end. So if folks want to come down, we're here in the library. So we will move on to report from the superintendent.
Okay, there were a couple of items in my report this evening that the board had asked for some information about that I'd like to share with the board. The first one was there was an agenda item request about student use of cell phones in the district. And we met with the administrative team a few weeks ago, and we asked them to look at some different areas, the cell phone use by grade span, so K2, 3, 5, 6, 8 in high school. How do they collect? Do they collect cell phones? And are their cell phones used at any point for educational purposes? So we gathered that information. So I'll share just some general feedback from the team. First of all, this is they're asking, like, what is our problem to solve? And I think in any decision we make is what problem we're trying to solve. What might be the pathway to solve that problem? Feedback from our team is policy. A policy might not be the best route. Might this be an actionable step through the strategic planning process? Those were questions they raised. There were some practices that they thought were important to continue. For example, there are some students we have who use cell phones with headphones on the bus to support them in their ride home. There's some other kids at the high school during the lunchtime. They will listen to music through their headphones on their cell phones to avoid feeling isolated or anxious in a large lunchroom. There was other feedback that if the cell phones are a disruption to the learning environment, the school needs latitude to address the issue. At the high school, cell phones are used as part of academics in some situations. Example, polling and photo class. Sometimes it's used as a calculator, etc. Students use cell phones. Feedback from the high school, sometimes there's communication through employers. For example, if there's a shift change. At the high school, there's a practice that some teachers use, what they call the break from your phone, where there's some shoe racks they have for kids to put cell phones in so they're not in use. Some challenges the team identified, there's challenges that they've had this year. During field trips, we did have some parents who did not send their children on overnight field trips because student cell phones were not permitted, despite the fact that the school said there were school personnel that could be contacted at any time. Another challenge is that their parents texting students during the day, and another challenge is general enforcement by staff. So that was I was asked to bring some feedback from the administrative team, and that's what I have to share. I don't know if there's anything else the board would like to know at this time.
So I'll start with a thank you for doing that deep dive with the administrators to see. And I know obviously you had sent in one of your updates sort of more detailed by grade level and schools, the use. It does seem like it's really a middle school and high school phenomenon. Not to say younger kids don't have them, but it's not nearly as common, I think, as the middle school and the high schoolers. So, any other questions on that? Laura?
So will we discuss then in August if, what the board would like to, if we'd like to have a workshop or something like that around use of cell phones in the schools or something?
I mean, we can certainly have that conversation. If the majority of the board feels that that's that we want to move that forward, we can certainly do that. Yeah.
And I just turned it off. It takes a village to support me here. Thank you, Michelle. So I want to give an update to the board about as you know, we were very fortunate recipients of a very large sum of money from the Stetson Family First Scholarship. And I'd just like to share some thoughts I have, sort of where we're at with that. And sort of I like to make, my recommendation to the board, what you might consider how to handle these funds. So if we remember, to recap, on February 28th of this year, the board voted to accept a gift of approximately $3.6 million from the Norman B. Stetson Trust and take the necessary steps for the district to receive the gift, including authorizing the superintendent to sign associated legal and financial documents. All financial documents have been filed, and we have just received the initial disbursement of $3,081,012 on May 30th. So the initial disbursement is in Bass Savings. That's where it is. Here are the next steps for the board. You need to determine how you're going to manage that scholarship, because that's certainly a large sum of money. There are a couple of options for you to consider. First, the district manages the scholarship and the funds. To have this work, we would work collaboratively with Bass Savings, where the funds have been distributed and future funds will be distributed. And they would help us manage that financial aspect along with our business department. The high school would determine the criteria for selection, and they would award the scholarship. That's one option. Another option, we've been approached by the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation to have them manage the funds in the scholarship. So my role is advisory to the board and to help give you information to support your decision making. So I will give you my recommendation on how you should consider this be handled. We've had a tremendous amount of conversation about how to best handle and distribute this most generous gift. And we all know that everybody wants to get this in the hands of kids and needing kids. Both entities, RSU 5 and the foundation, can manage and award those scholarships. However, the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation offers something we simply do not have the capacity to do, and that is a mentor experience for the duration of the post-secondary education for students who receive a scholarship. For that reason, I recommend the funds go to the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation with the following conditions I would recommend. Obviously, there would be legal documents that would be drawn up by our attorney, Drummond and Woodsum. RSU 5 needs to have the ability to terminate the partnership and have the balance of the funds returned to the district for a distribution. If for some reason, we know the foundation is run by volunteers, if the foundation no longer exists for whatever reason, that would return to RSU 5. And because of that size, the fund could last for generations. It will outlast all of us. As this is an academic scholarship, I recommend the criteria is set by our high school, and also that there's a strong voice from the high school for selection, as no one knows our kids better than the people right here in this building. And then I would also recommend that the foundation provides a written report to the RSU 5 Board of Directors annually. If this is the direction the board would like to pursue, I would certainly work at Mr. M. at Drummond and Woodsum to prepare documentation, and I could bring that back. We would bring that back in the fall because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of legal documents that have to be prepared. I just need some direction if you would like me to continue to pursue that.
So just a quick reminder and maybe new information for our newer board members. So the Freeport Scholarship Foundation was formed 4 or 5 years ago, I think. Does that sound right? And they provide, and they've come and done presentations for the board in the past. And they award 2 scholarships every year, one to a junior and one to a senior. And they do the junior in the effort so that sometimes it's hard when you don't get the scholarship until the spring and you've already decided where you're going. They do the junior award in an effort so that folks might reach a little higher in where they're willing to apply because they know they've already been awarded a sizable scholarship for the 4 years that they're there. And as Superintendent Scarappa mentioned, their big sort of great piece of the puzzle is each person is paired with a mentor that they work with the whole 4 years they're in college, which, studies show that mentor piece is really, really important, particularly for kids who may or may not have, family or close friends that have gone through the college process before, right? So the mentor piece is really important. So we have, Jean and I have met with the Scholarship Foundation. I agree. I think the district could do it or the foundation could do it. My opinion is I'm also in favor of providing it to the foundation with the criteria and the stipulations that keep the really important pieces like setting of criteria in the board's or in the district's hands. So just wanted to provide a little background on who they were in case the name wasn't ringing a bell for who that group is. We are very familiar with them. So, anyone have questions, thoughts? Maura.
Thank you, Jean. Could you remind me the criteria for the scholarships that the foundation awards? Does it have to be to a 4-year college?
No, actually, they do both 2-year, 4-year, and technical. I think this year they have, or last year, I don't know who the awardees are this year, but last year's they had one for technical school. So yeah, it sort of runs the gamut. And they try to partner the mentor based on the track that, whether it's the same industry or something who can add some value.
Right, that's great. And does the award go to the student or directly to the institution?
I believe it goes to the institution.
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
right?
Okay,
Yeah.
just because I know the finance committee discussed this previously, and I know that was one thing we talked about. I don't know that I have a different recommendation, but we talked about, kids who might have other expenses.
Well, that's true, right? Because maybe it doesn't go directly to the school because I think one of the technical school awardees, the award was more than the classes, but they needed some help with like transportation costs and things like that, and they got the
Yeah.
funds to them that way.
They did. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
was my only question.
Yep.
Was on like the flexibility. Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was Carolyn. So I know when we discussed it as a finance committee, we were talking about that mentor piece and that obviously how important that is. But with the increase in the amount of the scholarship fund, we were, I think I would be hopeful that they would be able to, give out more than just 2. But I just don't know, are they capable of supporting more with mentors?
And that's when Michelle and I met with members of the group, that's one thing they're hoping to do, either larger amounts or more scholarships for kids. Certainly with that amount of money, they will certainly be able to do that. And then they're working to see how building their base for mentors as well. So that I think is in the works for them.
I have a follow-up with that. And I remember when we got the award in the specific wording from the scholarship from the Stetson, they said it was for college only. But Freeport Scholarship Foundation would be able to give out scholarship to someone going to tech school, but it just wouldn't be the Stetson funds. Is that correct?
And they have other funds as well.
Right. Okay.
And that's one thing we'd have to make sure, Beth, working with Drummond and Woodson, that they would obviously read over all what has to happen based on what that documentation was. So we'd make sure that language was in there.
Okay, thank you.
And we asked the question around sort of segregating our funds out. One because there might be different criteria for they already do that now. They have a couple of different sources of funds. They keep them segregated. It also keeps it cleaner if for whatever reason they did dissolve or go away and we needed to accept the funds back, like which ones are our funds, would be very clear. So that's one of the reasons for the legal documents sort of laying all that out. Yeah, Colin?
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. And I think that the general idea sounds good. I'm remembering back. Jen is no longer here. Is that accurate? Okay. Cynthia may come running if I start saying inaccurate things. But last year on the policy committee, my two policy committee partners who were on that conversation are not here either. So it's just me and my brain trying to remember these things. We had a conversation in the context of the question of memorials, of how scholarships can be structured in RSU 5, and the question of which scholarships and how many are currently managed through the RSU, how those are publicized to students and the public, and then which scholarships are currently managed by the foundation. And my general takeaway from that was that remains very confusing, is that it is not very clear and not very centralized what scholarships are available, who is eligible for them, who disperses them, and how that would work. Again, someone come running if I'm saying something totally inaccurate. But that was my understanding, and that currently there's no website, for example, that makes all of that clear to students so they know that what is possibly available to them. I think what I would say currently is I'm open to the idea of considering the foundation doing that. But either way, I think that before that step is put in place, I think there needs to be larger clarity for the RSU for what scholarships are available and how people know about those. And part of that will have to do with that, whether people are aware that, whether a student is aware that they're applying for the Stetson and what that would mean, and that versus they're applying for the Kara Kaikini awesome boot award. And they know that there are certain stipulations that are for that, and they're just that's very, very clear to everyone. So again, I think before we would make that decision of whether or not they can handle that, or whether or not we are up for that, I think we just need to have some more clarity on that, because I'm not comfortable with where it is currently.
And I can jump in on that one, Colin, because Kelly and I have had that same conversation, a very conversation about what we have currently. And actually, so the high school we're going to circle back to this information. The high school has provided us with the list of scholarships, who awards it, where is. So we now have that documentation in our office, and then we need to circle back and look at if there are some things we need to clean up. But we do have that information. I think that's certainly something as we can clean up that document and show the board what's available. But to your point as well, is that how, and we can talk how are those things publicized for kids so that they know that those things are available. But we did do that maybe last month, I think.
And anecdotally, as a parent of a senior, the Freeport Scholarship Foundation scholarship is probably the only one I knew about directly from the school. I mean, I know that they in the newsletter will be like, we have lots, come look, you should apply. There's lots, for folks to have. But there were specific call outs for that one. Like, this is the deadline, this is what we're looking, these are criteria. So I do think there probably is some more work to be done to make sure that, everyone knows where to get it. I mean, I don't think there's a website, but I think, the guidance office has that. They're sort of the keeper of that information. And there's a spreadsheet, right? Because I think I saw the spreadsheet. But there is now. Oh, there wasn't before. Oh, I didn't know that you created that. Okay, but I will say that the Freeport Scholarship Foundation one was pretty well advertised.
I mean, just to follow on that, that's great that the spreadsheet is now in your hands, and now we have it. I think I'm just curious about the question that came up earlier about whether this. How many scholarships are offered, how much money is offered, sort of what the plan is for that. I guess I would be curious to know what we think as a board, like, does it make sense for us to say, we should do some analysis of that and sort of figure out like what the different options are and like what the kind of like, I don't know, the cost and benefit is to our students in terms of in other words, us as a body saying like it's more valuable for there to be more scholarships of lesser amounts, or it's more valuable for there to be fewer scholarships of greater amounts for us because that benefits our students more, or whether we kind of leave that decision in the hands of the foundation. I think that's again sort of a question where I'm a little on the fence.
I think regardless of who manages the funds and sort of facilitates the awards, those types of questions would come to us. Those would be under the criteria for the scholarship that the board would set. So whether we manage it through Kelly's office or the foundation manages it through there, the documents would say that these are the criteria under which these would be awarded, and Jen is on their board, or the principal of the high school is a automatic member of that board, and a voting member on that. So I think your point is a good one in that we should be the ones saying, you know, how are the funds getting dispersed? And I don't know if this was your intent, but when you were talking, what came to me was, you know, we want to make sure we're not duplicating efforts of existing scholarships, right? Like if we've got 25 ceramics scholarships, we probably don't want another one. You know, where are their gaps, where are their needs, like hearing from the principal, hearing from the guidance office of, you know, what are they hearing from students around what would be more impactful, many, you know, more smaller or less bigger. So I think regardless of who manages it, that is expected of us to come up with those criteria.
So I guess I'll just say, how do we do that? Like, what's the body that does, like, is that something we're going to discuss in our August retreat? Like, we're going to look, like, get all the numbers out and get all a piece of paper and sort of spend an hour and a half trying to work that out ourselves? Or is that something where the finance committee is going to work on that? Like, how is that actually going to happen?
My recommendation was that we set up like an ad hoc committee of board members as well as Jen from the high school and maybe a guidance counselor or two to start, you know, kind of drafting what our proposal might be. And then we can come back and report work to the board. Because I think it's too hard of a discussion to have at a board meeting, right? But because I think there are many components that we need to kind of get in line and and figure out for the board so that you can make a decision on criteria. Because it would be lovely to say, here's what's covered, where's the gaps? Because I think in the finance committee we kind of talked about that as well, is trying to catch the gap, right, with these funds. So.
Yep. And maybe that ad hoc committee could start that work over the summer, so that when we come back together in the fall to look at a potential draft of the documents, we would also be looking at a draft of, you know, maybe the criteria. So did I hear you just volunteer for that committee, Colin? Throwing her voice into your microphone.
And could I just add one other piece? Even if that work is not done over the summer, because I look at board members around this table who've just finishing up budget season in a year and you're washed out. And I know our high school principal has no voice right now. Even if it's not done over the summer, it's still, we can do it. It can be done because it's not going to be awarded till June. So there's plenty of time to, if this is the direction the board wants, to do this carefully.
Plenty of time.
If we do, Kelly and I are taskmasters. It will get done because we've got to award that scholarship next year. So I think that that's. I also think that that's the part of the board work plan, because there are lots of things that you know. I know lots of things we'd like to do, but let's really nail those things down. And this is certainly one we have to do. This is a priority, so this has to be part of our work plan. And then we will make sure that it gets done enough time so the board can thoughtfully consider that, and we can do whatever legally we have to do in the kabuki dance to move funds if that's what we have to do. So even if it doesn't start right this summer, I'm confident that we can get it.
Just to be clear, so are we also giving Jean the direction of saying, yes, explore over the summer what it would take for the foundation to be managing those funds? Is that what we're
Right. So she's looking for sort of the temperature of the board. Do people? I guess we would open it up to if someone feels strongly that the board or the district should manage those funds versus the foundation. I'm not hearing any. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't lock us in if the document comes back with what they're willing, we can say no, right? Okay.
And I have one more, some resignations. Aisling Dono is a DCS educational technician. Doug Perot is retiring as a bus driver, and also he's head custodian at the high school. Connor Walsh, Freeport Middle School assistant principal, is moving on to the principalship in Bath. And Aaron Dow, our director of school nutrition, and we wish them all nothing but the very best.
I was going to say,
Okay, that's under me too. So in your packet, item 8C, it's on a beautifully green piece of paper. There is the 24-25 business meetings here. We also have the retreat on August, so mark your calendar, August 28th. It does say 4 o'clock, location to be determined. Cynthia and I are still working on that, all the way to our last meeting on June 11th. So we can put those all in your calendar and get ready for the next year.
so I'm going to make a suggestion that we swap the April 9th and the April 30th meetings from Durham and Pownell. One of the things we heard in our Q&A before the budget in Pownell was some concern around communication, making sure everyone had the information they needed to make good decisions. One of the struggles, and we've actually seen this in Pownell in the past with their mail delivery, is getting the booklet in their hands before that meeting. Freeport's usually gets it first, and then Durham, and then Pownell seems to be a day or so behind. So to make sure that the folks in Pownell have time to get it and digest it and come to the meeting prepared with some questions for us, I'd spoken with someone in Pownell, and we talked about maybe switching those two meetings. So there was a little more time in Pownell to get that brochure and have their questions ready. So I don't think it really changes much. It just it would just change, so we would do our Durham Q&A on April 9th, and we would do our Pownell Q&A on April 30th. Anybody? Okay. It's just in our, ingrained in our brains that it's always Pownell then Durham, Pownell then Durham. So we'll just have to, Ginny will remind us that we're switching it. All right. Now you're really done? All right. You must be, because Kelly's at the podium for the administrator report.
So included in your packet this evening, the purple paper, are the expenditures through May 31st, 2024. This is, again, reflective of what we believe to be the majority of the spending. There's a small amount happening now as we're giving awards and student awards and all those kinds of things. So that kind of stuff is still happening. And of course, we're still, as we talked about, in the athletic season as well. So the athletics are being, officials are still being paid. But we would, I think this is largely representative of where we'll end up at the end of the year. So we're still in really great shape. We're about 93% expended. Was what we would anticipate. And again, it does not appear that we would need to use the $900,000 that we had appropriated out of fund balance this year, because we are underspent in our other lines as well. So it is looking positive for us, and we will continue to work as we prepare. Yes, I'm already talking about this. As we prepare for the budget next year, not the 25 budget, but the 26 budget, to really start looking at, again, the requirements of the state by lowering the threshold of what the amount of fund balance we can have, and then really looking at our capital project funds, in the capital needs of the district, and see how we can address those through our undesignated fund balance.
quick question. Because our interest has ended up like so far over what we estimated, what are we estimating for, this coming year? Is it just
I
curious?
did increase the number.
Okay.
I think it was 200 maybe?
I'm trying to put budget out of my brain. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's just go to the website because I don't have any of my budget stuff with me.
I'm going to tell you the number right now.
Okay, Michelle's going to look.
209,000.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, and again, while it seems still like a conservative number, we don't know where the rates are going to stay, so I didn't want to get like too ambitious with the number, but it's been pretty consistent for the last 2 years, and so we wanted to, be comfortable with the number, but we did increase it.
That's great. Thank you.
Other questions for Kelly? Thank you. All right, board comments and committee reports. This is your clarion moment, Colin. Please, someone have a comment before Colin starts reading. All right. All right, take it away, Colin. Maura.
So I know next year we're going to be hiring a consultant and undertaking the strategic plan. I just wanted to know if we could also add that to our agenda in August to talk about and who the board to give input on who that would be. Because I wasn't certain what the timeline for hiring that person and all of that was. So.
Got it. I don't think it would happen over the summer. No. Yeah. Any committee report outs that folks want to share before we wrap up? Because this item isn't on the agenda for next week, so this would be our last.
Just kidding, it's the Clarion. No, at our last Region 10 meeting, we had the engineering teams for the bridge project come and present, and that was also a public meeting, and a few folks came from the public, but it was helpful just to get a sense of, from the engineers in engineering language, really what's wrong with that bridge, in that it will fall down, it will go away, and it probably should have fallen down already. But just due to basic wear and tear, there was no problem with the original construction. It's just if you use salt to make people not slip, that will eventually degrade both concrete and steel. So that was a very helpful presentation, but just a good reminder that item is on the ballot next week, and just to remind folks that that is what they're voting for. They're voting for us to accept the loan that as a collection of RSUs on behalf of Region 10, so that we can then replace that bridge so that the students can go into their school.
And correct me if I'm wrong, so this basically allows us to access matching funds, and then the parts that aren't funded through the grant are at a 0% interest rate loan. Correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay. And it will be a separate...
Kelly's not saying no. So.
Yeah. And it is a separate ballot from the budget referendum ballot. So when you go, you have at least 2 ballots, if not more, if you're voting in a primary or something like that, but at least 2 for the school. So one, the Region 10, and one for RSU 5 for the overall budget. So thank you for that reminder. Yep.
Also, my new favorite part of the Region 10 meeting is that every other meeting or so, we learn about things that the Region 10 high school is selling, is getting rid of, that's been donated. So there's currently a boat and a boat trailer that is available for purchase at a really good price. You just reach out to Region 10. What I've heard is that the trailer is more valuable than the boat, because the students at Region 10 have already taken apart the boat as part of their learning practice, But I would just encourage everyone both to look into that, but also to come to the Region 10 meetings, because that part of the meeting is always awesome. Now the Clarion.
I love that the engineering presentation in engineering speak was that the bridge will fall. Technical, very technical. Maura.
I have a question, not about the boat, but did information go out to, maybe I just missed it, but information to the public from Region 10 about this vote?
So, did information go out about the boat? I don't think so. But the vote, yes. The ballot item, yes. There were a number of, there was a letter written that was entered as an op-ed, I think, in a couple different newspapers, and there was also some other outreach that took place. We don't know, exactly how well disseminated that information was, like how many people read those particular newspaper pages, but they haven't gotten any negative feedback about the idea. So everybody that they've talked to about it is in support of the item, because it's a really good deal. Just by the way, it's a really good deal.
Do you know if the actual ballot, usually they have that explanation of matching funds and 0% interest, and is that all explained there? Because I would hate for people to think this is a really...
My recollection, and I don't have it on me, unfortunately, but my recollection is that we did look at that language, and it is pretty clear.
Is it in your purple folder?
It's not in my purple folder, Ginny. It's not there. It's elsewhere. It's in a different folder that I didn't bring today, and it's my fault. Mea culpa.
Thank you for that. Any other committee report outs? All right. Then I will turn it over to the policy committee.
Hello. Welcome to the policy committee portion of the evening. Today we're going to be looking at the second read of EEA, Student Transportation Services, which we all looked at the pithily titled first read of this policy about a month or so ago. And y'all gave us some good notes to go back and to work on clarifying some of the overall sort of purpose of this policy, the overall structure, and then getting a little bit more information from the Director of Transportation. So we had at our last meeting, we had a conversation with him, and were able to ask some questions directly of our Director of Transportation to get a good sense of really, and how does this really play out, and to check some of the ideas that had come up from the board suggestions of language, check that with him to make sure that it sounded reasonable and practicable. So I don't think I'm going to go through anything with a fine-tooth comb, but other than say, we moved some language around to just make clear what the policy is for, to make clear whose responsibility it is to determine, to develop and implement, and to alter the routes, and what the director will be taking into consideration, and also then to sort of clarify how that then that process considers different factors such as dead-end roads or health or pre-K or K students or walking conditions. So unless, Kara, there's anything else, or Cynthia, that I haven't talked good about, would love to hear your thoughts and feelings.
All right, let's get the motion on the floor first, and then we'll chat about it. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval, second read, for the following policy, EEA, Student Transportation Services? Maura and Malik, thank you. Questions for Colin? I didn't bring my first read of this one with me, but I feel like the RSU 5 buses do not travel down dead-end roads or private roads or ways, is new from the last read, and I don't think it's true, the dead-end road piece, because if it's a public road, they do, as long as there is an appropriate turnaround on the dead-end road, like if there's pre-Kers on the street.
We talked about that, Cynthia. Maybe you can come up. We talked about that, and I think there was some technical explanation of that, which basically is that if it's called a dead end road, then there's not a turnaround. There's something about that. I can't remember exactly what that was, but we talked about that, and I can't for the life of me exactly remember what Kara.
Well, Jeremy was there as well, and
Yeah.
so he approved of that language.
And saying that is technically.
Yeah.
Okay, I
in
live
saying
at the
this
end of a
language-
dead end road, and it comes down my street. So
But is there a turnaround?
there is.
Right. So I
But
think,
there
I
is
think
also a sign at the end of the road that says dead end road. So, and just for clarity's sake, like if I read this and I saw a dead end road sign, I would
yeah,
be
but
like,
we
that's
did,
a
we
dead
did
end
also
road.
talk about that, and we talked about putting the turnaround, and he suggested we not do that, and I don't remember now why. Yeah, I just honestly can't remember what the reason was. But that was his. It was one of his few things that he said for us not to put in. Was like, don't put in a dead end road if there's a turnaround. That there's something about that was problematic from his end.
So,
Again, I just don't have
I
notes
guess my question is what was the rationale for adding the dead end section? Because I don't know if I know we talked about private roads and ways because we've heard from community members about that, right? Around the ability for the buses to go down private roads and ways. So I think when we talked this was in Durham, if I recall, at the Durham meeting, I know we talked about that piece of it. I just wasn't sure about the dead end, like, could we just leave it at buses do not travel down private roads and ways? Because sometimes they go down dead end roads when there's a turnaround and sometimes they don't. I mean, like, should we just leave that dead end part out?
My recollection was that, again, that was something that Jeremy thought was important to have in there because it makes it as policy makes it clear that if you live on a dead end road, there would need, I guess, in this case, it would need to be an exception. It would be an exception to the rule. It would be and the exception would be if there's a turnaround. That it's basically a way of saying allowing for the director of transportation to make that determination.
I guess I'm confused about what a dead-end road would be defined as then, because
I mean, every dead end road has some kind of turnaround because of the,
Not for a bus, it doesn't.
well, for a fire truck it does, which is pretty much the same. No? Really?
That's true. Yeah, I
Been
mean,
in a
again,
road
like
in South Portland that you drive right down to the end and you cannot turn like you can't. Yeah.
I mean, my sense is that, I mean, other than your own children being brought to school, I think the question there is, I think buried in your question is also, are we all of a sudden
Changing it.
blocking out? And my sense was that we are not doing that. It's basically just saying we're remaining consistent with our current practices, but it's also just making that clear. Cynthia's half standing
But
up.
I don't think it's clear.
yeah, I don't feel
feel free
like
to
it's
come up.
clear
I'm not
either
s-
because the bus goes down the road by my house and it's dead end, but it goes all the way to the end and then it comes back.
How does it turn around? Okay. Yeah.
Backing up when it goes back by your house. And it gets
Yeah,
back
I mean,
up.
I guess this is where I would say I will own that I'm being a poor transmitter of this information, but at the same time, what I am trying to protect is what Jeremy has said in practice is important as a staff member, and I think that so I'm not wanting to I'm not trying to misrepresent what he's saying, but I'm also not trying to argue it away because I don't think that's appropriate because he is the person that has managed that situation. He knows what, and he's not wanting to make it not possible for kids to go to school. Like that's exactly the opposite of what he's trying to do. So again, just to be clear, if we need to send this back and not look at it again until next year and get feedback either from Jeremy or from our new director of transportation, we can do that. But again, I think what the language in here that we have represents the best information we have from the folks who actually run the operation.
Laura.
So I see that under B it says, you know, for our pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students, the bus will pick up and deliver to the home, providing a suitable bus return is available. So I guess maybe to your point, Michelle, is that in conflict with the section above, or is it an exception to the section above about dead-end roads?
But it only says exception to the distance. It doesn't say exception to the dead-end road rule. It says exceptions to the above distance shall be made for the following reasons only. So I think those exceptions apply to the paragraph directly above it. It says, you know, living beyond a reasonable blah, blah, blah. I think it's very definitive, the way this is written, that buses do not travel down dead-end roads. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And unless we want to change it to say that that is what we want, that will no longer go down dead-end roads. Or if we want to still make it an exception, then I would say exceptions to the above criteria, comment, whatever, strike distance, shall be made for the following reasons only. Because I will say that it only comes down my road when there's a pre-K or a kindergartner on the street. So that is consistent with what's happening. So maybe it's the exception, not just a distance. Exceptions shall be made for the following reasons only.
That makes sense to me. So I think I guess the alteration there would be.
Okay, I'm just going to change my own mind here. Sorry, thinking it through. I'm not sure we want to make an exception to the private road, even for kindergartners or pre-Kers, though, right? Because that's a liability issue. I'm back to striking, we don't drive down dead-end roads. Unless we want to put that somewhere else in here and not in sort of that dictate at the top. Kelly?
Or if it's possible, if this is really in the spirit of what the transportation director is trying to get at, dead-end roads without turnarounds. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's where I don't feel comfortable speaking
Yeah.
for him on that. I guess what I would say is, from a policy, Kara, you jump in here. From a policy committee perspective, what I would say is, I think I'd feel comfortable with us passing this at second read with the addition of down dead-end roads in parentheses where proper turnaround is possible, end parentheses, as sort of the only change to that. Or we send it back and we do it and we talk again with Jeremy, or we talk again over the summer.
I think maybe we send it back. Yeah. I mean, it's not a new policy. Like we literally have 7 days left until all the kids are no longer on these buses. So to figure it out.
Just a point of process. So Jeremy won't be in the role in the summer. We could bring it. We could do it this week and bring it back possibly next week. Because otherwise, you have to do 2 new reads based on our other policy about policy procedure. You can't have more than so many weeks in between a first and second read, so you'd have to bring it back twice. So that's just a process point.
Yeah, I think
so
we
just
could,
bring it back.
We
could quickly do this Friday.
You're disagreeing with each other.
Oh, we are?
I'm thinking out loud. I just know Jeremy is swamped with, we want feedback from him.
So just bring it back for 2 reads next fall.
I think
okay,
that
that's fine. I just wanted to point out
I'd
that.
love to have it done, but I'm just worried capacity for you, for Jeremy, to get that done.
That works for me. I just wanted to bring that point up. So
yeah,
that
no, I appreciate that.
Just a question. So, Colin, I know that you said it was important, like Jeremy wanted to have that in there. So, was he sort of the one that brought up the whole buses do not go down dead-end roads, or where, like,
my
where
recollection is
that
that came up in our last conversation having to do with private roads. That came up in our last meeting, is my understanding, and so that's why we were addressing them together, because that. Kara, does that sound relatively?
I guess I was just thinking, and I know that we're going to send it back or whatever, but it almost seems like you could just cut that whole second sentence of the RSU 5 buses do not travel down and just literally keep as part of the route creation process, bus stops will be determined by the Director of Transportation.
I think my understanding of the first read was the discussion around the private roads, and that was very clear that we don't go down them because it's a liability issue.
Okay.
So I think maybe that was what prompted the discussion around should we add a sentence in. What I don't know is if the dead end and private roads were being used synonymously, because they're not
Gotcha.
always.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We'll
Cool.
figure it out.
So we are going to. Oh no, keep it. Yeah, keep it coming. You want the Clarion to read from?
Yes, please. I just had one more question. Did we, never mind, I just saw it was moved down to another paragraph. I was wondering about the distance, because I know we talked a little bit about safety versus distance for the school, but I see that that's still there.
Yes, I don't believe we didn't change anything regarding distance. I think the only sort of thing relevant to that was just that I think foregrounding that it's the director of transportation that determines those routes and also makes determinations if they need to be altered. And so anything would flow through him and the superintendent, but sort of just clarifying that point. So there was nothing changed about the criteria for the distance, just how that would be determined and when.
All right.
But otherwise, we will work on this, we will save it up, and we will come back with a fresh first read.
So who are my Robert's Rules people? We have a motion and a second on the floor. How do we take it all back? I don't think we want to vote it down. Okay, yeah, who made the motion? Maura and Malik. Would you guys like to withdraw your first and your second? Okay. Michelle will hear from that if that was the wrong way to do it. That's good. We don't do that often, which means we're very efficient with our decision making. Well done, guys. Okay. And then anything else you want on your policy report? Policy committee report, or are you good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we have no unfinished business. We will move on to new business. All right. So do we have a motion for consideration of approval that pursuant to Section 14854 of Title 20A, the Finance Committee is authorized to transfer not more than 5% of the total appropriation for any cost center in the FY25 operating budget to another cost center or among other cost centers, provided that the total FY25 fiscal year operating budget shall not be increased by such transfers. Kelly and Maura, thank you. I promise we'll vote on this one. Okay, so I think this is actually what confused me at the annual budget meeting because of that warrant question about going above the 5%. This is up to 5%, and instead of the full board having to make that vote, we designate the Finance Committee to do that. And this is actually for next year's transfers. Typically what happens is at the end of June, if they're like, last year, I think, is a good example of that. We had a retirement that we hadn't known was coming, and there was a payout of sick days that per their contract, and it overdrew. And it's a relatively small article, so it overdrew that by like $10,000. So the Finance Committee was able to make a transfer from another line item or another article that had $10,000 in excess, move it over so that we didn't get in trouble from the auditors. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. So that's what this is for. So instead of having to reconvene the whole board to make that decision at the end of June last year, the Finance Committee was able to make that vote. So that's what this is doing. This authorizes the Finance Committee to do that for next year. So last year we voted for the ability for the Finance Committee to do it at the end of this year, in the upcoming weeks if necessary, but it doesn't look like that's going to be necessary this year. But so this is for next year. Any questions? All right, then we shall take a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. All right, so 14. So we have 2 items in 14, right? All right, so I will hand it over to you. Oh, no, we'll get the motion on the floor for the first one. Do I have a motion for consideration and approval to employ a social studies teacher at Freeport High School for the 24-25 school year? Cheyenne, Beth, thank you.
So I present to you Elise Dumphy Hendricks. Elise has a Bachelor's of Art in History from Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, a Master's in Education from the University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut. She holds certification for history and social studies for grades 7 to 12 in Connecticut, and she has applied for her main certification. Her professional experience, she's a social studies teacher at the William H. Hall High School in Westford, Connecticut. References describe Elise as able to think on her feet, reflective, professional, authentic, approachable, working well within and across departments, having a tremendous impact on students. She has a growth mindset, and she has a gift for teaching.
We used to play Hall High School in soccer. Completely unrelated to this candidate. Any questions?
Just to note that, again, we've just got an amazing number of candidates applying for this position, and just to, again, like whoever needs a kudos tonight, kudos to everyone in RSU5 who's creating that situation where we have that kind of applicant pool for this position. That's just really heartening and exciting.
Agreed. All right. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Great. None opposed. And 14B. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval to employ a board-certified behavior analyst, BCBA, for the 24-25 school year? Cheyenne and Danielle, thank you.
And I present Allison Ginn. Allison has a Bachelor's of Science in History from the University of Southern Maine, a Master's in Educational Psychology with a concentration in Applied Behavior Analysis from the University of Southern Maine. She holds certification as a board-certified behavior analyst and has a with the Board Behavior Analyst Certification Board. Relevant experience, she has been a special education technician from Wyndham High School. She's been a field supervisor, behavior analyst at Woodford's Family Services in Westbrook. She's been a behavior analyst at the Margaret Murphy Center for Children in Auburn, and a behavior analyst at Glickman Lauder Center for Excellence for Autism and Developmental Disorders, which is a K-12 day treatment program in Portland. References describe Allison as very bright, compassionate, a proponent of teaming. She takes others' perspectives into consideration when writing plans for clients. She's compassionate, yet real with families when working through challenging situations, and she's a strong collaborator. And I'd like to remind the board that we have had this position open this year. It was a new position we added for this year. We've had it open all year and unable to fill it at all. And I had an opportunity to do a second interview with Allison, and we're just so very fortunate to have her join our team.
All right. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Great. None opposed. Back to public comment.
I'm
Do you
just
have a
going to
public
come
comment?
up during the public comment period. Kelly Wentworth, 133 Upper Minot Road panel. Only because I did a little research while you guys were all talking about the transportation policy. So the Region 10 explanation on the ballot reads, project explanation. The primary focus of the project involves removal and replacement of the bridge structure at the exterior of the Region 10 school building, which local officials have determined must be replaced to ensure continued safe access to the building. The project also involves replacement of the stairs leading to the bridge and other interior and exterior work required to remove and replace the big structure and stairs. Sorry, I'm trying to read through the word sample. But, and then B is the financing explanation. And again, both of these appear on the ballot themselves. B says financing explanation. The project costs up to a maximum of $643,821. The project's costs up to a maximum of have been approved for the funding through the main SRRF program, which is the revolving rental program, which probably should have been spelled out, but that's okay. Of this amount, Region 10 will receive 44.99% up to $289,655 that will be forgiven and 55.01% up to $354,166 that Region 10 will repay at a zero interest term of 10 years. So it does appear, in fact, on the ballot that you will receive. And thank you, Town of Durham, for posting the sample ballot on your website.
All right. Thank you for that update.
Could you thank
Resident Wentworth?
Could you thank the resident for their comment?
Yes. All right. So I would now take a motion for consideration and approval to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA, Section 4056A, for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation. I keep looking this way. I'm going to go look this way. Malik and Maura. All right. All those in favor? None opposed. Great.